let me introduce Helena Caban, who will talk to you a little bit about how this whole program got started, a little bit about Just World Books, and we'll introduce our two speakers.
Thank you, Dagmar, and thank you everybody here at the Palestine Center, Jerusalem Fund, and the Jerusalem Fund Gallery. It's an institution that I've been a fan of for a long time, especially for their cultural programs, and they also have humanitarian programs in Palestine. And it's just such a pleasure to see a great crowd has come out today. I am not only the publisher of Just World Books, and we are proud, obviously, to have published Mohammed's book, White and Black, but I also head up the nonprofit organization Just World Educational, which for IRS reasons has to be separate, but our 501c3 does educational programming, and so we're delighted to help Dagmar and our friends at the Palestine Center set this up today. Mohammed is a wonderfully talented artist. He lives in Ramallah. He started out life as a cartoonist. He is a former political prisoner. And throughout his life as a cartoonist, he has also sought to develop his artistic capabilities in all dimensions. And it's been my pleasure now twice to be traveling with Mohammed in this country. As you may know, the facilities for art education in occupied Palestine are extremely limited. There are no art schools there. It's almost impossible for Mohammed to get art supplies there. So when he comes to this country, he's just like a sponge. He wants to go to every single art museum, and I've been to art museums with him in Detroit and Chicago and Durham, North Carolina, and I tried to dig him out of the Guggenheim the other day in New York. But the result of this immense desire to learn and to develop, one of the first results is you can see the lino cuts that he has produced in recent years, which are linked in some ways, and I'm sure he can answer questions about this, to his work in cartooning, but they're obviously not the same as drawing a daily cartoon or 2 or 3 daily cartoons for a daily newspaper in Ramallah, which is, I would call it his day job, except it's not, because he also has a day job. I don't know how he does everything, but it's really a pleasure to introduce him, and especially tonight's special guest, Bro Russell, who is the executive director of Cartoonists Rights Network International. Very important organization. In my understanding, cartoonists are much more feisty in defense of freedom of expression than most print journalists, although I would love to be proved wrong as a print journalist myself. And cartoonists around the world seem much more focused on supporting each other and supporting each other's freedom of expression and leaping into the breach to defend each other. So I know that Mohammed has received on a couple of occasions some help from CRNI intervening on his behalf, and now he is a key Middle East ambassador for CRNI, and that's why it's really great to have Bro, who is the executive director of the organization, and with a history of cartooning himself, somebody who can talk much more sensibly to Mohammed about cartooning, about what it's like to be a cartoonist under threat, than anybody that I know. So I'm just delighted to introduce to you Bro Russell and Mohammad Sabaaneh.
Thank you very much, Helena. First, I want to, what is it? Hello, 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 hello. Okay. I just want to say, I don't want anybody to panic, but I've been doing public speaking for many years, And as soon as I hear the first person sleeping in the front row here, I begin to wrap up my introduction. Boy, that felt flat.
Yeah.
Moving right along, I'd like to recognize a couple of people. Here tonight also is Nick Kausar, one of our board of director members from Tehran, and then Canada, and then here, and he also spent a little time as a prisoner in Tehran. He escaped and moved. I think it was 4 years before your wife and Nikki could come and join you in Canada. He's been in the same conditions as so many of our cartoonist clients have been in. And over the last 25 years, we counted them up recently, we've had about 135 separate individual cartoonists move through our system, most of whom we still have good relationships with. We don't claim to just pour in some help and get you out of jail and bye-bye, see you later. We follow people through their careers. We want to make sure that their cartoons remain powerful and effective, and that they're in a place or in a situation where they can freely draw their cartoons without fear. Also here tonight is Ann Tellez. Are you here, Ann?
Yeah.
Yes. Ann is a former board member and now board of advisor member. She's one of the most important political cartoonists in the world. Please try to get to say hello to her and ask her what Jeff Bezos is doing over there in the Washington Post. Are you all going to go on a trip to the moon or something like that? Only you, huh? Thank you very much. I can't see everybody. Is there any other person from the board or from CRN here tonight? Okay. Anyway, I'll get started, and don't forget about the sleeping in the front row. I only have a few words to say, and then I'll turn and start interviewing Mohammad, and we'll have a little dialogue, and then we'll hand it over to the audience, and anybody in the audience can take a crack at them. In cartooning, we like to say a good political cartoon makes us think. But I don't think we're not thinking enough in that statement. Mohammad's cartoons eventually make me think, but first, they make me feel. I see the women and children with just blank discs for their eyes in his cartoons, and I immediately feel that these are people who have had the spirit of life hammered out of them. Hopelessness has taken over hope, and fear has taken over fearlessness. Can you imagine what a cartoonist who's under that kind of attack is like? A mother not being able to know whether their children will ever grow up and be safe. A father who can no longer provide for his family. Even some of the people with guns, the killers, have blank eyes because the same spirit of life has been squashed out of them as well. Let me try to find my place again. Only after I feel just a tiny micro bit of the horrors that Mohammad's characters have in their cartoons have I gone through with, and going through that is when I might begin to think. Most political cartoons that I read, at least here in the United States, yes, they're after you thinking, they're clever, but they don't every time go over your feelings, your humanity, your sense of justice, your sense of injustice. The cartoonists who can trigger a feeling of, my God, what is happening here? Who is doing this? What responsibility do I have? How do I connect to those people in that cartoon? And those are the things that you will think about after you feel. You feel that one of the cartoons on the wall was a soldier escorting a little boy across the battlefield, and lying at the bottom was a dead, rotting body. Who can look at that and not feel what that little boy must be experiencing, what that soldier might be thinking? Mohammed has tasted of this fear. He has been in those dangerous situations. He's been in those dungeons. His family sitting at home has wept and wondered if he will ever come back. Will we starve to death? Will we be exploited by our enemies? Somehow could it be that we would also be tortured along with him? The tyrant has to crush courage. They have to crush hope. They have to spread trauma as widely as they can so that the traumatized becomes paralyzed. Over the 25 years that Cartoonists Rights Network has been operating, we've encountered people like Mohammed time and time again, who when faced with the monstrous, my eyes have been getting a little funny lately, so bear with me, who when faced with the monstrous return fire with ideas, the truth, and the kind of courage that the soldier on the battlefield must render up when outnumbered and outgunned. I've known Mohammed for many years. As with so many other cartoonists I've encountered on this road, I am in awe of their courage, their sense of justice, and I just want to say to Mohammed that all these things gathered together of looking at the desperation, the pain, the lack of human compassion and spirit that you so ably render in your cartoons, they leave me speechless, but they leave me feeling. And I just want to thank you for being my friend and exposing to the world this wonderful ability you have to make people feel what you see. And before I turn this over to the both of us to ask some questions, I would like to present, now I haven't been into this yet, I would like to present Mohammed with a small gift from Cartoonists Rights Network of this wonderful block of styrofoam. This wondrous block of styrofoam. Let me see if I can open this with a sharp pen. What? Oh, sorry, Mohammed. I got another one at home.
Okay.
But you can keep the block of styrofoam, of course. This is done by another one of our wonderful, brave cartoonists. His pen name is Zapiro. He is from South Africa. He's a South African cartoonist. You know, during apartheid, he had to make fun of all the big dogs running the country. And then he found it so difficult that after Jacob Zuma took over, now he had to make fun of the ANC. And it was a very difficult transition, and they didn't like it. This is a wonderful little statue
Thank you.
of our Nelson Mandela, and they are available. They're surprisingly cheap. But I'd like you to keep that and have this
Thank you.
along with your wonderful styrofoam. as just a gesture of thanks for all the service you've rendered us, all the wonderful things you've done with the children and
Thank
the
you.
cartoon workshops that you've been leading. And I'm supposed to ask you questions now. Actually, the only one I really am concerned about, Nick, you know the answer to this as well. What happens to your family when you go through these things? When you were in prison, when they stripped you of your cartoon, when they're making threats to you, what is happening to your family?
Actually, you could find the answer in some of my cartoon in this book, because I tried to debate not just the Palestinian prisoner and also their family, because also the Palestinian families outside the prison, they are suffered, they are missing their prisoner, if he is brother or husband or anyone else. They are facing the same condition that the prisoner also he faced, the same threat. And I think all the Palestinian people inside Palestine, they are in a big prison. And that's what the last book of Ilan Pappé, he wrote, the biggest prison on the earth. He want to describe Palestine. He wrote the biggest prison on the earth. And I did also another cartoon depicting this idea that all of these Palestinians inside West Bank, Gaza, 1948, and diaspora, they are in big prison. They are most of them, they are missing their family, their land, their heritage, and they're missing Palestine, and that's why they have the same condition. But in one of my cartoons in that book, I did one for this family who they are missing, the one who is inside the Israeli prison. It's a hard condition, but most of the Palestinian family, even inside Palestine or outside Palestine, could go through these conditions.
One of my favorite cartoons was a few years ago. It was kind of an overhead shot, kind of a three-quarters view of a prison courtyard inside the prison. And there's a line drawn in the sand. And on one side of the line is a prisoner. And on the other side of the line was a guard. And of course the prison had, what do you call them, these gun emplacements all around it, everybody looking down. And it just struck me, what a wonderful expression of both of them being in prison. They were both imprisoned. They were both acting out roles as guard and prisoner, but they were both in a prison.
Yeah. And actually, I was talking this cartoon about the Palestinian political faction. I was talking about Fatah and Hamas, because they are just keep fighting to divide the Palestinian land, while both of them inside this big prison. It's look like this two prisoners inside this prison, and want to divide this cell between them. That's why I debate this cartoon. The one I donate to CRNI. It was yeah.
What was your impression? How effective do you think your trainings were with young students, young college students, and even children, in getting them to draw and talk about and relate to their traumatic experiences?
Actually, I started this idea to do these workshops years ago, because when I started doing my cartoon as a Palestinian cartoonist who lives in Palestine, and here in Palestine we don't have like resources, books, museums, and all of these things. And I remembered while I was in the university, we just had just one book in a big library for Naji Al-Ali, the Palestinian cartoonist. That's why when I started traveled around the world and meet cartoonists and try to improve my ability, my understanding for the cartoon, I started to think that I should convey this knowledge to the next generation, to know more about the cartooning, to more about the cartoons, and how they can use it. I use it with some kids in some of the Palestinian camp to get them through this fair and all of these conditions. I use the cartoon also with some of these kids to promote the critical thinking, because I think, as you mentioned, the cartoon is a tool to promote the critical thinking for the kids and for the people around the world, because the cartoon itself is critical thinking, and the cartoonist, he thinks out of the box, and I need all of these kids to start think out of the box and to use this kind of art for that. And recently we did, me and Sian and I and Freedom Theater in Jenin, we did this great workshop for kids, and we did organize a big museum exhibition for these kids for their artwork about freedom of speech, because it's also tools to promote or to promote this knowledge about what exactly the freedom it's mean. And that's the intersection between the CRNI cartoon and Freedom Theater. That's how I got the idea and make this connection between all of the institutions to organize this workshop. I think it is good tool to use it with the kids. It's a good tool, not just as a political message and convey our suffering in Palestine, and even to raise our children, the next generation, to give them another tool to resist against this ugliness and atrocity in Palestine. It could be a good tool, and I think it's very important to convey it to the Palestinian generations.
So many NGOs from all over the world work in Palestine, and on so many different subjects and so many different points of view. I've worked for over 35 years in the field. My career here in the United States as a full-time employee, I think I've spent 2 years here in the U.S. I've worked all over Africa. I've worked all over the Middle East, South Asia. And I often hear people, when people actually speak truthfully and not politely, but they actually get to truth, they usually say, all those people from over there coming over here, they don't really get it. It's nothing to do with their will or their spirit or their willingness to work, but they live in an environment that fundamentally can't really grasp what it's like here, or how complicated it is here, how decisions have to be balanced by dozens of different things pushing and pulling. Do you find, though, that maybe my interpretation here is wrong, and that you do get people, not only properly motivated people, but people who truly understand the situation?
I think it's very easy to explain the situation there through this kind of art. You can depict the situation by this visual language for the people without asking them to talk. If you never find any cartoon from my book with any text or with any dialogue, with any, there is no need to translate it. There is no need to explain it for the people. Just I want the people to feel about what's going on in Palestine by this tool and by this way. And that's why I think it's very important to promote this kind of art and to motivate this kind of art in such area like Palestine. We have been suffering for more than 70 years there, and I think it's very useful to deal and to use this kind of art as a tool.
I would like to open it up to our guests in the audience, and while you're talking with Mohammad, I will rehearse my speech again.
There's 2 mics. There's a mic over there. If anybody wants to use that mic for question, and then I will bring a mic over to you on this side. I want to start out by just asking Mohammad a question myself, since I'm happy to hold the mic. I wanted to ask you about how often you create a new cartoon. How long does it take you? I mean, obviously there's a long thought process before you start putting pen to paper. But tell me a little bit about process. I think a lot of us are really interested because we don't know how this kind of thing works.
Actually, it's the difference between this cartoon in my book and my daily cartoon. My daily cartoon is just one idea with maybe 2 or 3 figures in my scenes, and I'm talking just about one topics. You could find some artwork here in this book. It took me 8 days to finish or accomplish this artwork, but it's very hard to explain for the people how the idea comes to my mind and how I can reflect it to become a cartoon. It's very difficult, but when I used to work with the kids, sometime for example, when I want to talk about the freedom of speech, I try to give them all the tools, what exactly they can use, the microphone as a tool for freedom of speech, the pen, pencil, and how they can combine all of these elements together to convey one idea. It's a way how sometimes I think about the cartoon, and sometimes from the people, anyone say any sentence, anything, you could read some news from the newspaper, see a photograph for events or accidents in Palestine, and how I can convert this photo into another idea to depict the situation in Palestine.
We'll start over there, and then I'll take one from this side. Go ahead.
I have a question about the method that you made the lino cuts. I'm not as familiar with it. And then earlier she had mentioned that it's difficult for you to get supplies. So that seems kind of like a method that's more supply intensive than, say, drawing. I'd be interested in learning more.
You want to know the process of this? Actually, first I learned how I can use or do the linoleum cut. I need to start actually how I started to change all of my style until I arrived to the linoleum cut. Actually, in 2014, I was in France in a conference in France, and I met the great cartoonist Anna Altnes, and we were in the hotel. Then she told me, I'm going to do my animation. She went to her room for 20 minutes, and she came back with her animation. And that's what shocked me, that as an Arab cartoonist, we used to use the technology, the iPad, the Wacom, and spend a lot of money doing to buy all this equipment and try to improve all of these programs, the software, to improve our work. While most of these cartoonists around the world, they use the traditional way, as we call it traditional way, watercolor, ink, and all of these things. That's when I went to art supply in France. That was the first time I went to art store and buy brush pen there, and I could not use it actually at that time. Travel back to Palestine and start to down some idea, try to create some new style to do my cartoon, and that's how I started this new figures that my friends Russell mentioned, without eyes, and try to abstract even the character in my cartoon and to get into this new style. 2 years later, I came here to States, and one of our friends, Matt Walker, he's the political cartoonist, invited us to be at his home. And I also met Anna again, Cal Kegel, Robert Russell, and all of these cartoonists. And at that time, Cal suggested that you should use all of this new artwork to print a book. Don't publish all of this artwork in your daily newspaper. You can print a book with this new style and new way. And that's how I started the idea of my book. And then I traveled from DC to New York. I met one of the great graphic novel artists. His name is Seth Tobokman. He's a teacher in School of Visual Art, and he gave me a book for World War III magazine. And he showed me how he carved the linoleum. The linoleum, it's like material. You carve it and make it like, put the paper on it and press with the ink, and you got the artwork. But when I traveled back to Palestine, I could not find the tools, the linoleum, the ink. That's mean I cannot do linoleum cut. I found the alternative for the linoleum, the material which we carve it. I use the linoleum from the ground. We use it for the hospital, or sometimes you cover the ground on it. as alternative for the linoleum. The tools, I bring them, all of them from here, from United States, and they are very expensive. If you want to know the price, the ink, I also found another alternative ink which we use it in the big print press, and then I started produce this kind of artwork. First, I tried to use it in my cartoon. Then I started a new thing, like to do an artwork in it, not just by cartoon.
So, Mohammed, I understand. أول شيء يعطيك العافية. I know
يعافيك.
you're after a very long tour in the United States, so chapeau, really. It's not easy to have a tour at this time in the United States about Palestinian
Refugee.
issues,
Yeah.
any issue. So I was wondering, how was the response all around? Because you were in Boston, you were in many, many places, as in New York, right? If I'm not wrong. How was the response from the Americans in general or your audiences? Any other future comings here? Any collaborations coming, up? Any plans to do something in here, like a big exhibition or something in collaboration with somebody? Just give us some hope. Thank you.
Actually, about my plans, you can ask my publisher. Exclusive. She has a contract with me. No, actually, I'm trying to get another exhibition, maybe in another place in the United States, another maybe in European country or another place around the world. I have a lot of plans. I did 3 big artwork as a mural, one about the woman, another one about the human history, another one about the Palestinian history. Now I'm working to launch new project with Ilan Pape, the Israeli historian who's wrote the ethnic cleansing in Palestine and the biggest prison on the earth. Maybe we can do. Also, he will write a small introduction about Palestinian history, rely on the Israeli archive, and I will do the artwork with him. Maybe next year we will arrange for third tour here in the United States about how the people in the United States respond. Actually, unfortunately, most of the people who come to or came to all of my events, they are pro-Palestinian. Sometimes I prefer who do not know anything about Palestine to talk about Palestine. But it's good also to show them some Palestinian art, even if they pro-Palestinian. I had good also events in some art school, and I concern about art school because I'm not just a political speaker, or I'm also an artist, and I care that I want to show the people my art, not just keep talking about politics. I don't know, maybe Robert Russell remember me at 2010 when I came here. I could not speak English, but now she asked me to learn English because she wants to promote the book.
Are your books available at home, or are they suppressed? Do you have enough freedom of press in Palestine that if you wanted to publish a book like this, would you be able to?
Actually, there is a small bookstore in Jerusalem. Bring some copy of my book, and we launched also my book in Palestine last year. But till now, there is no any publisher, Arabic publisher, asked to publish it in Arabic language. I hope you will find another one who will ask to publish it in Arab world or in Palestine. The Palestinian Ministry of Culture did not ask about it. Even the Minister of Culture, he's my friend, but he did not.
Have you had any joint projects with, let's say, the Israeli cartoonists? The Israeli cartoonists with peace, for peace, like Kitschka or others. Have you had any projects with them?
Actually, I refused. John Blontu asked me to do an exhibition with Michel Kishka, with Nimrod. Last year, I've been in France for the Istak festival, and asked me to make joint exhibition with Israeli cartoonist. His name is Nimrod, and most of his work is comics, not cartoon. But they asked me to make like joint project with Israeli cartoonist, and I refused. And I think I'm part of from BDS movement, the boycott movement. I believe this is peaceful way to resist against the occupation, and I have to commit our principle. That's why I cannot do any exhibition with any Israeli cartoonist. At the same time, I have a good relation with a lot of Jewish cartoonists here in the United States, in European country. Even Seth Tuchman, I discovered that he is a Jew cartoonist and he's support Palestine. But I cannot do any project or exhibition, joint project with any Israeli cartoonist. Cartoonists for Peace, they are my friend, John Pluntu, and his institution. They always supporting me also. And I'm traveling from here to France to meet him. But this is my principle. I cannot do anything with Israeli while they are occupying our land.
Hi, Mohammed. My name is Dina. So the first question I had, which relates to everything, is what is the rest of the Middle East doing to support you? Are they?
Why don't
the
what?
rest of the Middle East?
The rest of the Middle
The rest
East?
of the Middle East.
The rest?
Yeah, Bladna.
other
Yani,
countries.
what are our countries doing to support you? Because you talked about traveling
Because
within
always
Europe.
I'm criticized our regimes. Yani I had a lot of problems. Russell did not mention that I had a lot of problems with all of the political faction in Palestine and a lot of the Arab regimes in the Arab world. That's why they did not support me, and they will not support me. And actually, I don't need them to support me because, you know, if I ask the formal support from any political faction, I will not criticize them. I don't need to get any interest from them to keep criticize them.
But as an artist, more not so much on the political aspect, but on the artistical, because cartoonism is something that is still not very traditional for our culture.
I don't know. You know, now or
I'm
last
just
year,
curious,
yeah, I will tell you. Last year, I organized a big exhibition about the Trump decision about the relocate the American embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, and against the kids' detention from the Israeli army. And around 150 cartoonists from around the world participated in this exhibition in Ramallah. And I found Ramallah municipality supported this this exhibition, while there is no another formal Ministry of Foreign Affairs or anyone else, Ministry of Culture, asked me to support this exhibition. It could be a very great tool to use it to talk about the Palestinian situation, but they did not. And we moved this exhibition from Palestine to Belgium, and one of the Palestinian citizens in Belgium paid money to print all of this cartoon and exhibit it in Tunisian center in Belgium, while our Palestinian Authority did not care. And actually now, just before I came here, also I started a new idea to start the International Palestinian Cartooning Festival in Palestine, to invite some cartoonists to come to Palestine and to see the situation there, because they will talk about our situation. They will see what's going on the ground, and they will be our ambassador. Better than all of these ambassadors, they pay a lot of money from our taxes, and that's it.
Thank you. The other one more thing is I work at the Library of Congress, and I'm not on the. Do you know the Library of Congress?
Yeah, I know.
Okay, if you've been there.
Sarah's here.
Just asking. Oh, okay.
His art's there.
Is it? Okay,
Yeah,
I was just gonna
my
say
art's there.
because I haven't seen it there. Okay, we'll have to go find it.
Thank you. Thank you.
One more question. It's a little bit sensitive, but you just highlighted something maybe, but it's for, you know, for your audience who really admire your work for years. I'd like personally to know, were you ever threatened? I mean, I know you were threatened by Israelis maybe in the past, but are you threatened on a personal level by anyone? From, you said, the Arab countries, from the PA, from colleagues, from anyone who would, you know. And I know it's a very sensitive question, but we're just not here to admire your work. We want you to stay.
I should answer. Okay.
Mohammed bin Salman did?
No, I don't think so. Mohammed bin Salman has a good tool in Palestine. He will not. Directly, he will not. Unfortunately, I'm not Khashoggi.
Fortunately, you're not.
Yeah. Yes. And from different political faction. First time I came to the United States was in 2010. And in 2008, I was threatened from some Islamic movement in Palestine. They threatened me to death because of my cartoon. And even when I met Russell and he told me about his work, I did not tell him. Not because I don't need, or I fear that they will do something for me, because I don't want to expose them or to talk about our political faction outside Palestine. And this is my battle inside Palestine. I had many problems with Palestinian Authority. The last one was when they stopped me and suspended me from my work, and our president asked, the Palestinian president asked for interrogation with me in, maybe 3 years ago. And always I have problem. Just 3 months ago, I was traveling back from Belgium when the Israeli soldiers stopped me at the border and confiscated one of my artwork. It was a cartoon about also another mural about the Palestinian history. Always I have problem.
Did you get it back?
No, it was a copy, not the original one. I know that if they find it, they will do that. That's why I don't take the original one. Even all of this artwork, I send them to the United States with my friend Miko Bellet. Not with me.
He's more targeted than you.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. We really appreciate your candor, as well as all the interesting things that we talked about tonight. We talked about the book. The books are over here, available. And please go back in, and now you can look at the lino cuts with new eyes, because you know a little bit about how they were made and how important they really are. And if anyone, again, is interested in having one, please let me know. Thank you so much for coming.